The alien girl stood frozen on the icy surface of her home planet, her wide eyes locked onto the horizon. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she stared at something that should not exist, a human ship descending from the sky. It was sleek and silver, its edges glowing faintly with an aura of power. She had heard stories about humans, but they were supposed to be myths, tales told by elders around flickering fires to scare younglings into behaving. Her name was Lyra, and she wasn't used to fear. On her world, a harsh place where survival depended on quick reflexes and sharper instincts, she had always been strong. But this was different. This defied everything she knew about the universe. Humans weren't real, or so everyone believed. Yet here one was, hovering above her like some kind of ghostly apparition. Lyra's heart pounded harder with each passing second. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly as the massive vessel settled down, kicking up clouds of frost and dust. A part of her wanted to run, to disappear into the jagged mountains behind her where no one could find her. But another part, deeper and more curious, rooted her to the spot. What if this was her chance to understand? To learn what lay beyond the stars? As the ship's engines powered down, silence fell over the desolate landscape. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, a hissing sound broke through the stillness. A ramp extended from the belly of the craft, and figures began to emerge. They wore bulky suits, their faces obscured behind visors, but there was no mistaking it. They were humanoid. 2 legs, 2 arms, upright posture. Just like the legends described. Lyra swallowed hard, her throat dry despite the cold air biting at her skin. One of the figures stepped forward, raising a hand in what might have been a gesture of peace. Their movements were slow, deliberate, as though they didn't want to startle her. For a moment she considered responding, but then panic surged within her chest. Who were these beings? Why had they come now, after centuries of silence? Her mind raced with questions and fears. If humans truly existed, what did that mean for her people? Had they known all along? Or worse, had they been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike? Lyra's thoughts spiraled until she felt dizzy. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to steady herself. And then it happened. From somewhere deep inside her, a voice whispered, "You are stronger than this." It startled her enough to snap out of her paralysis. Slowly, cautiously, she took a step back. Another followed. She wouldn't confront them, not yet. Not without knowing more. But even as she retreated, Lyra couldn't tear her gaze away from the strangers. Something about them intrigued her, pulling at a thread of curiosity she hadn't felt before. Whatever their intentions, she realized, they had already changed her life forever. And perhaps they would change the fate of her entire species. With one last glance at the mysterious visitors, Lyra turned and fled toward the safety of the mountains. Behind her, the humans watched silently, unaware of the storm their arrival had set in motion. Lyra ran faster than she ever had before, her boots crunching against the frozen ground. Her breath came in sharp bursts, visible in the frigid air as clouds of vapor that quickly dissipated into nothingness. The jagged peaks loomed ahead, their snow-capped summits piercing the pale sky. She didn't dare look back, not yet. Every instinct screamed at her to put as much distance between herself and the human ship as possible. The mountains were her sanctuary, a labyrinth of icy caves and narrow ridges where few dared to venture. Here, she could think, regroup, and figure out what to do next. But even as she climbed higher, her mind churned with unanswered questions. Why had the humans come? How did they find her planet? And most importantly, what did they want? As she reached a shallow cave carved into the side of a cliff, Lyra finally stopped to catch her breath. Leaning against the cold stone wall, she closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm the storm raging inside her. Her heart still raced, but she forced herself to focus. Panic wouldn't help her now. She peeked outside cautiously, scanning the horizon below. The human ship was still there, its metallic surface glinting faintly under the dim light of the twin suns. Figures moved around it, their movements methodical and precise. They didn't seem hostile, at least not yet, but appearances could be deceiving. For all she knew, they were preparing some kind of weapon or trap. A shiver ran down her spine, though whether from fear or the biting cold, she couldn't tell. Pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders, Lyra sat cross-legged on the rocky floor and let her thoughts drift. Growing up, she'd heard countless stories about the Sky People, mysterious beings who supposedly traveled between worlds, leaving chaos in their wake. Some tales painted them as saviors, others as destroyers. Either way, one thing remained consistent: they weren't supposed to exist. But now they were real. Flesh and blood. Standing right there on her planet's surface like it belonged to them. The thought made her fists clench again. Who gave them the right? This was her home, her people's land. If they thought they could just waltz in uninvited, they had another thing coming. Still, anger alone wouldn't solve anything. Lyra knew she needed more information if she hoped to protect her tribe, and herself. The elders would know what to do, they always did. She resolved to head back to the village once night fell, when the humans would be less likely to spot her. Until then, she would stay hidden and observe. Hours passed as Lyra kept watch from her perch. Occasionally, she saw flashes of movement near the ship, a group of humans carrying strange devices, others setting up equipment that looked like it belonged to another world entirely. Whatever they were doing, it was clear they intended to stay a while. That realization sent another wave of unease through her. Time wasn't on her side. As dusk began to settle over the landscape, painting the sky in shades of violet and orange, Lyra noticed something odd. One of the humans broke away from the group and started walking toward the base of the mountain. Alone. At first, she thought maybe they were scouting the area, but something about their posture caught her attention. They moved hesitantly, almost nervously. Curiosity got the better of her. Slipping quietly out of the cave, Lyra followed at a safe distance, using the shadows of the rocks to conceal herself. The figure stopped near a cluster of tall, crystalline formations that jutted out of the ground like ancient spires. They knelt down, examining the crystals closely, running gloved hands over their smooth surfaces. What were they looking for? Lyra narrowed her eyes, studying them intently. Then it hit her, the crystals. They were rare, prized by her people for their ability to amplify energy. Could the humans have come here specifically for them? It seemed far-fetched, but stranger things had happened. Suddenly, the figure stiffened, as if sensing they were being watched. They turned their heads slowly, scanning the area. Lyra pressed herself flat against a nearby boulder, holding her breath. Her heart thudded loudly in her ears, threatening to give her away. Seconds ticked by agonizingly slowly, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the human stood up and returned to the ship without further incident. Letting out a shaky sigh of relief, Lyra slunk back to her hiding spot. She needed to get back to the village as soon as possible. If the humans were after the crystals, her people had to be warned. Those resources were vital, not just for survival, but for defense. As darkness fully enveloped the land, Lyra prepared to make her move. She wrapped her scarf tightly around her face to shield against the freezing winds and adjusted the straps of her pack. Before leaving, she glanced one last time at the glowing silhouette of the human ship in the distance. Its presence felt wrong, unnatural, like a wound in the fabric of reality itself. With determination burning in her chest, Lyra set off toward the village. Whatever happened next, she vowed to face it head-on. After all, she was no ordinary girl. She was a survivor. And survivors didn't back down, not even when faced with the impossible. The journey back to the village was long and treacherous, but Lyra moved with practiced ease. She navigated the icy terrain silently, her steps light and deliberate, avoiding loose rocks or patches of unstable snow that might give her away. The cold nipped at her cheeks, but she barely noticed. It was a familiar sensation, one she had grown accustomed to over years of living on this unforgiving planet. As she approached the outskirts of the village, Lyra slowed down, scanning the area cautiously. Everything seemed quiet, almost too quiet. Normally, the faint glow of lanterns would illuminate the huts carved into the mountainside, and the sound of murmured conversations would drift through the air. Tonight, however, There was only darkness and silence. Her stomach tightened as unease crept up her spine. Something wasn't right. Lyra crouched behind a cluster of boulders, peering around them for any signs of movement. There were no guards posted at the entrance, a glaring omission. Her people always kept watch, especially during the night when predators roamed freely. This absence sent a chill deeper than the frosty air coursing through her veins. Taking a deep breath, she slipped into the shadows of the village, sticking close to the walls of the huts. Each step felt heavier now, weighed down by dread. As she moved closer to the central gathering space, a large circular clearing where her people often met, she spotted something that made her blood run cold. Scattered across the ground were supplies, tools, baskets, bundles of dried food, all abandoned in haste. Footprints marred the snow, some belonging to her people, others not. Large boot prints led away from the village, heading toward the direction of the human ship. Lyra's heart sank. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't ended well. She knelt beside one of the discarded baskets, running her fingers over its woven surface. It was still intact, untouched by scavengers. That meant whatever occurred must have been recent, perhaps even earlier today. Panic threatened to rise again, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't bring answers, action would. "Hello?" she called out softly, her voice barely above a whisper. No response came. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional howl of the wind slicing through the narrow alleys between the huts. Lyra stood and continued her search, moving deeper into the village. She checked every hut she passed, calling out quietly each time. Most were empty, their interiors dark and cold. But then, as she reached the farthest edge of the settlement, she heard something, a faint whimper, barely audible over the wind. Her pulse quickened as she followed the sound, her hand instinctively reaching for the small knife strapped to her belt. The noise led her to a partially collapsed hut tucked into the base of the mountain. Pushing aside the thick animal hide that served as a door, Lyra stepped inside. What she found stopped her in her tracks. An elderly man lay curled up on the floor, his frail body trembling under a thin blanket. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. For a moment, Lyra didn't recognize him, but then she saw the intricate tattoos etched onto his hands. They marked him as an elder, one of the wisest members of her tribe. "Elder Torin," she whispered, rushing to his side. "What happened? Where is everyone?" The old man stirred weakly, his clouded eyes opening just enough to focus on her face. "Lyra," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "You're safe." "I'm fine," she said quickly, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "But what about you? And the others?" Torin coughed, wincing in pain. When he spoke again, his words were slow and labored. "They came, the Sky People. We thought they were myths, but they weren't. They took our people, dragged them away. Some fought back, but they had weapons, terrible weapons." Lyra's chest tightened. "Why? Why did they take them?" "They wanted the crystals," Torin replied, his gaze drifting toward the corner of the hut where a small pile of shattered crystal fragments lay scattered. "They destroyed everything we tried to protect. Said it was necessary." He spat the word like it left a bitter taste in his mouth. Anger flared within Lyra, hot and fierce. How dare these strangers invade her home, steal her people, and destroy what little they had? But beneath the anger was fear, a gnawing, suffocating fear. If the humans had already taken so much, what hope did she have of stopping them? "We need to warn the others," she said firmly, more to herself than to Torin. "Anyone who managed to escape. We can't let them win." Torin shook his head weakly. "It's too late for that. They've already begun. But there is something." He paused, struggling to sit up. Lyra helped him lean against the wall, propping him up gently. "There's a place," he continued, his voice growing steadier despite his frailty. "A hidden cavern deep in the mountains. Our ancestors used it to store relics, things of great power. Among them is the Heartstone. It's said to hold the essence of our world, capable of granting immense strength to those who wield it wisely. Lyra frowned. She'd heard stories of the Heartstone as a child, but like the tales of the Sky People, she had dismissed them as legends. Do you really think it exists? She asked skeptically. It does, Torin insisted, his eyes locking onto hers with surprising intensity. And if anyone can find it, it's you. You've always been brave, clever. Stronger than you realize. Use the Heartstone to fight back, Lyra. For all of us. For a moment, she hesitated. The idea of venturing into unknown territory in search of a mythical artifact felt reckless, even suicidal. But what choice did she have? Sitting idly by while her people suffered wasn't an option. Not anymore. I'll do it, she said finally, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside her. I'll find the Heartstone and stop them. Torin nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I knew you would. Go now, before it's too late. With a final glance at the frail elder, Lyra stood and prepared to leave. Before stepping outside, she turned back briefly. Thank you, Elder Torin. I won't fail you. As she disappeared into the night, Torin closed his eyes, a mixture of pride and sorrow etched onto his weathered face. He prayed silently that the girl would succeed, for the sake of their world. The mountains loomed above Lyra like ancient sentinels, their jagged peaks cutting into the star-strewn sky. She moved swiftly, her breath visible in the freezing air, as she climbed higher and deeper into the treacherous terrain. The path ahead was steep and perilous, littered with loose rocks and slippery ice, but she pressed on without hesitation. Every second counted. Elder Torin's words echoed in her mind, the Heartstone, the hidden cavern, the relics of her ancestors. If there was even a chance that such power existed, she had to find it. Her people needed her now more than ever. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders, but she refused to let it crush her. She had always been strong, she would have to be stronger still. As dawn began to break, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink, Lyra reached a narrow ledge carved into the side of a cliff. According to Torin's directions, this was the entrance to the hidden cavern. It wasn't much, a dark opening barely wide enough for her to squeeze through, but something about it felt different. The air around it seemed charged, almost alive, as though the mountain itself were guarding its secrets. Lyra hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. The darkness swallowed her whole, and she fumbled for the small lantern strapped to her belt. With a flick of her thumb, the flame ignited, casting flickering shadows on the rough stone walls. The beam of light revealed an intricate network of tunnels stretching out before her, twisting and turning like veins in a giant's body. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her boots crunching softly against the rocky floor. The silence here was absolute, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing from somewhere far away. It was eerie, unsettling, but she pushed the unease aside. Fear wouldn't help her now. The tunnel soon opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Stalactites hung like teeth from above, while stalagmites rose from the ground like jagged monuments. In the center of the room stood a pedestal made of black stone, its surface etched with glowing runes that pulsed faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. And atop the pedestal rested the Heartstone. It was smaller than she expected, no larger than her fist, but its presence filled the entire space. The crystal shimmered with an inner light, shifting colors, blue, green, gold, as if it were alive. Lyra approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing loudly in the cavern. As she drew closer, the pulsing glow intensified, bathing her face in warm, radiant light. Reaching out, she hesitated. What if this was a trap? What if touching the Heartstone unleashed some kind of curse or danger? But then she remembered her people, their faces, their voices, the lives stolen by the humans. She clenched her jaw and placed her hand on the crystal. A surge of energy coursed through her, so powerful it nearly knocked her off her feet. Images flashed before her eyes, her village thriving, her people laughing, the mountains towering proudly under clear skies. Then came darker visions, flames consuming huts, terrified screams, the human ship descending like a harbinger of doom. Finally, she saw herself standing tall, wielding the Heartstone's power to drive the invaders away. When the vision faded, Lyra stumbled back, gasping for air. Her body tingled all over, as though every nerve ending had been awakened. The heartstone glowed brighter now, responding to her touch. She could feel its energy coursing through her, filling her with strength and clarity she'd never known before. But along with the newfound power came a sobering realization: using the heartstone wouldn't be easy. Its energy was immense, wild, untamed. Controlling it would take focus and courage. Failure meant losing not just herself but also any hope of saving her people. Taking a steadying breath, Lyra lifted the heartstone from the pedestal. The moment it left its resting place, the cavern trembled violently. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling, and a low rumble echoed through the chamber. Instinctively, she shielded her head with her arms, clutching the crystal tightly to her chest. "Not yet!" she shouted into the chaos, unsure if the mountain, or perhaps the stone itself, could hear her. "I'm not done!" Slowly, the shaking subsided, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Dust hung thick in the air, making it hard to breathe, but Lyra didn't waste time. She turned and sprinted back toward the tunnel, her lantern swinging wildly in her other hand. Whatever force had reacted to her taking the heartstone, she didn't want to stick around to find out what else it might do. Back outside, the wind howled fiercely, carrying with it the scent of snow. Lyra paused briefly to catch her breath, staring at the glowing crystal in her palm. Its light pulsed steadily, as if urging her onward. She tightened her grip and started down the mountain, her mind racing with plans. She knew where the humans had taken her people, their ship. That's where she needed to go next. But confronting them wouldn't be simple. They had weapons, technology far beyond anything her tribe possessed. Even with the heartstone, she couldn't face them alone. She needed allies. Her thoughts turned to the few villagers who might have escaped capture. There had to be others hiding in the wilderness, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. If she could rally them, they might stand a chance. Together, armed with the heartstone's power, they could fight back against the invaders. Determined, Lyra quickened her pace, heading toward a secluded valley where she suspected survivors might have taken refuge. The journey was long and grueling, but she pushed through exhaustion and cold, driven by the image of her people suffering aboard the human ship. She couldn't afford to rest, not until she found help. By midday, she reached the valley. It was quiet, almost eerily so, but she spotted signs of recent activity: footprints in the snow, remnants of a fire, discarded scraps of food. Someone had been here recently. Crouching low, she called out softly, "Hello? Is anyone here?" For a moment, there was no response. Then, from behind a cluster of boulders, a figure emerged cautiously, a young man holding a makeshift spear. His face was gaunt, his eyes wary, but recognition flickered across his features when he saw her. "Lyra?" he said, lowering his weapon slightly. "Is that you?" "Kale," she replied, relief flooding her voice. Kale was one of the hunters, skilled and resourceful. If anyone could help her, it was him. "Are there others with you?" He nodded, motioning for her to follow him. Beyond the boulders, she found a small group of survivors huddled together, their faces pale but resolute. Some bore injuries, others looked exhausted, but all of them shared the same determination burning in their eyes. These were her people, her family. And they were ready to fight. "I've found something," Lyra announced, holding up the heartstone. Its glow illuminated their faces, drawing gasps of awe and disbelief. "This can give us the strength we need to take back what's ours." One of the elders, a woman named Mira, stepped forward, her expression skeptical. "What is that thing? How do you know it will work?" "It's the heartstone," Lyra explained quickly. "Our ancestors left it in the mountains for times like this. It holds the essence of our world, and it chose me to wield it." She paused, meeting each of their gazes. "We don't have much time. The humans are growing stronger, and they won't stop until they've taken everything. We have to act now." Mira studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "If you believe this is our best chance, then we'll follow you." With renewed purpose, the group prepared to move. They gathered supplies, fashioned crude weapons, and mapped out a plan. By nightfall, they set out toward the human ship, guided by the steady pulse of the Heartstone in Lyra's hands. As they crept closer, the massive vessel came into view, its metallic surface gleaming ominously under the twin moons. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their movements mechanical and precise. Inside, Lyra could sense her people, alive but frightened, waiting for salvation. "We'll split into teams," she whispered, addressing her companions. "Create distractions, draw their attention away from the main entrance. I'll go in alone." Protests erupted immediately, but Lyra silenced them with a firm glare. "This is my responsibility. Trust me." Reluctantly, they agreed. One by one, they melted into the shadows, positioning themselves strategically. When the signal came, a sharp whistle echoing through the night, they sprang into action, hurling rocks and shouting to draw the guards away. Lyra seized the moment, darting toward the ship's entrance. Her heart pounded wildly as she slipped inside, the Heartstone glowing brighter with every step. The interior was dimly lit, corridors lined with strange machinery humming softly. Voices drifted from nearby rooms, speaking in a language she didn't understand. She followed the sound, moving quietly but deliberately. Eventually she found them, her people, locked in a large holding cell. Their faces lit up with hope when they saw her, though fear lingered in their eyes. "Stand back," she instructed, raising the Heartstone. Its energy surged, crackling in her hands as she focused on the lock. With a deafening crack, the door shattered, freeing her people. But the noise alerted the humans. Footsteps thundered down the corridor, accompanied by shouts. Lyra turned to face them, the Heartstone blazing like a miniature sun. For the first time, she truly understood its power, and her own. The battle was just beginning. The humans came rushing into the corridor, their weapons drawn and glowing ominously. Lyra stood at the forefront, her people huddled behind her, their faces a mixture of fear and awe as they stared at the pulsating Heartstone in her hands. Its light filled the narrow space, casting long shadows that danced along the metallic walls. She could feel its energy coursing through her, raw and untamed, waiting to be unleashed. "Stay back!" she shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her chest. "You don't belong here." The lead human, a tall figure clad in a sleek suit, paused for a moment, his visor reflecting the Heartstone's glow. He tilted his head slightly, studying her with what seemed like curiosity rather than hostility. Then, without warning, he raised his weapon, aiming it directly at her. Lyra reacted instinctively. Clutching the Heartstone tighter, she thrust her hand forward, releasing a surge of energy. A blinding beam shot out, striking the human's weapon and sending it clattering to the floor. The force of the blast knocked him backward, his companions stumbling in shock. Her people gasped, some cheering softly while others recoiled in disbelief. Lyra herself was momentarily stunned by what she had done. The power of the Heartstone was immense, far greater than she had imagined, but also unpredictable. If she lost control, even for a second, it could destroy everything around her. The humans regrouped quickly, shouting orders in their strange language. More guards poured into the corridor, surrounding them on all sides. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but Lyra refused to give up. Not now, not when they were so close to freedom. "Follow me," she commanded, turning toward an adjacent hallway. Her people obeyed without hesitation, trusting her completely. Together, they sprinted down the labyrinthine corridors, dodging blasts of energy fired by the pursuing humans. The ship's interior was a maze of cold metal and blinking lights, disorienting and oppressive, but Lyra navigated it with surprising confidence. It was as if the Heartstone itself guided her steps, whispering directions into her mind. Behind them, explosions rocked the passageways as Kale and the other survivors outside carried out their part of the plan. The distraction worked. Several humans broke off from the pursuit to investigate the source of the commotion. Still, enough remained to pose a serious threat. "We can't keep running forever," Mira panted as they rounded another corner. "We need a way out." "I know," Lyra replied grimly. She scanned their surroundings, searching for anything they could use to their advantage. That's when she spotted it, an emergency hatch marked with unfamiliar symbols. Without thinking twice, she dashed toward it, gesturing for the others to follow. Using the Heartstone's energy, she disabled the locking mechanism with a single touch. The hatch slid open with a hiss, revealing a steep drop leading outside. Cold air rushed in, biting at their skin, but it was a welcome relief compared to the suffocating confines of the ship. "Go!" Lyra urged, ushering her people through the opening. One by one, they leapt onto the icy ground below, landing awkwardly but safely. Once everyone was clear, she turned to face the remaining humans who had followed them to the edge of the hatch. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice low and fierce. "This is our home, and we will defend it." The leader stepped forward again, this time holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender, or perhaps negotiation. Through his visor, Lyra caught a glimpse of his eyes, which held no malice, only determination. He spoke slowly, enunciating each word carefully in a halting attempt to communicate. "We mean no harm," he said in broken fragments of her language. "Only resources." Lyra clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Your resources are our lives. You took our people, destroyed our homes. How can you claim peace after that?" He hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. Finally, he pointed to the Heartstone, then placed a hand over his chest. "Power, important. But misunderstanding." She narrowed her eyes, skeptical. Was this some kind of trick? Or did these humans genuinely believe they had done nothing wrong? Either way, their actions spoke louder than any apology. Before she could respond, a deafening roar split the air. Everyone froze, turning toward the sound. In the distance, massive shapes emerged from the mountains, the native predators of her world, awakened by the commotion. These creatures were fearsome, towering beasts with razor-sharp claws and glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. They moved with terrifying speed, drawn by the scent of blood and conflict. The humans immediately shifted their focus, raising their weapons to fend off the new threat. For a brief moment, chaos reigned as both groups scrambled to survive. Lyra seized the opportunity, grabbing the arm of the nearest villager and pulling them away from the fray. "This is our chance," she whispered urgently. "Move now, while they're distracted." Her people didn't need to be told twice. They fled across the frozen landscape, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. Behind them, the humans fought desperately against the predators, their advanced technology proving both a blessing and a curse. While their weapons inflicted heavy damage, the sheer number of beasts overwhelmed them. Lyra led her group to a hidden ravine where they could take shelter. From there, they watched as the battle unfolded, the humans gradually being pushed back toward their ship. Explosions lit up the night sky as the vessel powered up, preparing for departure. Clearly, the humans had decided retreat was their best option, for now. As dawn broke, the alien girl and her people emerged cautiously from their hiding place. The battlefield was littered with debris, shattered weapons, scorched earth, and the remains of fallen predators. The human ship was already ascending into the atmosphere, leaving behind a trail of smoke and ash. For a moment, silence fell over the land. Then, one by one, cheers erupted from the gathered villagers. Against all odds, they had survived. The invaders were gone, for now, and they had reclaimed their freedom. But Lyra knew better than to celebrate too soon. This victory was temporary at best. The humans would return, stronger and more prepared. And next time, they wouldn't make the same mistakes. Turning to face her people, she raised the Heartstone high, its glow illuminating their weary but determined faces. "Today we won," she declared, her voice ringing clear and strong. "But tomorrow we prepare. We train. We become stronger. Because this isn't over, not until we ensure our world is safe forever." Her words ignited a spark within them, a fire that burned brighter than the Heartstone itself. Together they vowed to protect their home, no matter the cost. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them united, with Lyra leading the way. In the days that followed, Lyra and her people worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. The village was in ruins, its huts reduced to charred skeletons and scattered debris. But amidst the destruction, there was hope, a fragile yet unyielding determination to rise again. Every hand pitched in, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, each contributing whatever they could to restore their home. The Heartstone remained at the center of it all, both a symbol of defiance and a source of strength. Its glow illuminated the nights as the villagers labored, providing warmth and light where none existed before. More importantly, it served as a reminder of their resilience. When doubt crept into their hearts, they looked to the crystal, and to Lyra, and found courage. But rebuilding wasn't enough. Lyra knew the humans would return, and when they did, her people needed to be ready. She spent hours each day practicing with the Heartstone, learning to harness its power without losing control. It was no easy task. The energy it contained was vast and volatile, capable of creating or destroying entire worlds. Yet every failure taught her something new, every success brought her closer to mastering it. Kale became her closest ally during these sessions, his steady presence grounding her when frustration threatened to overwhelm her. "You're stronger than you think," he often said, his voice calm but firm. "Remember why we're doing this, for them." He would gesture toward the villagers, who watched their leader with admiration and trust. Mira, too, played an important role. As one of the elders, she shared ancient knowledge passed down through generations, stories of battles fought and won, strategies employed by their ancestors to protect their land. Her wisdom complemented Lyra's instincts, shaping not only her abilities but also her leadership. Under Lyra's guidance, the survivors began preparing for war. They crafted weapons using materials salvaged from the wreckage left behind by the humans, shards of metal repurposed into blades, fragments of alien technology embedded into staffs. Though crude compared to the invaders' advanced arsenal, these tools were imbued with purpose and resolve. Training sessions became a daily ritual. Hunters taught combat techniques, while scouts trained others to navigate the treacherous terrain of their world. Even the children participated, learning how to set traps and send signals. Every villager, regardless of age or skill, had a role to play in defending their home. Despite the progress, tension lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. The humans' sudden retreat had been unexpected, almost too convenient. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they had merely retreated to regroup, to plan their next move. And when they returned, they would come with greater numbers and deadlier weapons. Her suspicions were confirmed one evening when Kale burst into the central gathering space, breathless and wide-eyed. "Smoke!" he gasped, pointing toward the horizon. "Over the ridge! Something's burning!" Lyra sprang to her feet, her heart pounding. Grabbing the Heartstone, she followed Kale to the edge of the village. In the distance, dark plumes of smoke spiraled upward, staining the sky. The sight sent a chill down her spine. Whatever, or whoever, was causing it, it wasn't natural. "We need to investigate," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. "Take a small group with me. Everyone else stays here and prepares for the worst." Within minutes, she and a handful of trusted companions were making their way across the icy landscape, moving cautiously but swiftly. As they approached the source of the smoke, the scene that greeted them chilled them to the bone. A massive crater marred the ground, its edges scorched and blackened. Scattered around it were remnants of machinery, pieces of what appeared to be a human ship. The vessel itself was gone, presumably destroyed in some kind of explosion. But what truly caught Lyra's attention were the bodies lying motionless nearby. Humans, clad in their familiar suits, their visors cracked or missing entirely. "They attacked each other?" Kale murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. Lyra knelt beside one of the fallen figures, examining their lifeless form. There was something strange about them, subtle differences in their armor, their insignias. Not all humans were alike, it seemed. Perhaps factions within their ranks had turned on one another? Or maybe this was part of a larger conflict playing out across the stars. Before she could puzzle it out further, a low hum filled the air. Looking up, she spotted movement in the sky, a fleet of ships descending rapidly, their silhouettes stark against the fading sunlight. These weren't the same vessels they had faced before. They were sleeker, more menacing, bristling with weaponry. "They're back," Lyra whispered, her grip tightening on the Heartstone. And they brought reinforcements. The group hurried back to the village, spreading the alarm as soon as they arrived. Panic rippled through the crowd, but Lyra raised her voice above the din. Stay calm! We knew this day would come. Now is the time to show them what we're made of. Her words steadied the villagers, reigniting their resolve. They scrambled to take their positions, armed with makeshift weapons and fortified by sheer willpower. Children were ushered into hidden caves, while elders prepared medicinal supplies and defensive barriers. As night fell, the human fleet descended upon the village, their ships casting long shadows over the land. Searchlights swept across the area, illuminating every hiding spot. Loudspeakers crackled to life, broadcasting a distorted voice and broken fragments of their language. Surrender, resources, leave peacefully. Lyra clenched her jaw, stepping forward into the open. Behind her, the villagers stood ready, their eyes locked onto hers. She raised the heartstone high, its glow cutting through the darkness like a beacon. No! She shouted, her voice ringing clear and defiant. You will not take what belongs to us. This is our world, and we will fight for it, with everything we have. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, with a deafening roar, the first wave of humans launched their attack. Energy blasts tore through the night, lighting up the battlefield in bursts of fiery brilliance. Lyra unleashed the Heartstone's power, sending waves of raw energy crashing into the invaders. Each strike decimated their ranks, but more kept coming, relentless and unyielding. Around her, her people fought valiantly, striking back with spears, arrows, and improvised explosives. The humans' superior technology gave them an edge, but the villagers' knowledge of the terrain and their unity tipped the scales in their favor. Through it all, Lyra remained at the forefront, channeling the Heartstone's energy with increasing precision. With each passing moment, she grew more attuned to its rhythm, its pulse syncing with her own heartbeat. She was no longer just wielding its power, she was becoming part of it. Yet, even as victory seemed within reach, exhaustion began to take its toll. Her body trembled under the strain, sweat mingling with frost on her brow. The Heartstone's glow flickered faintly, warning her that she was nearing her limit. Lyra! Kale called out, rushing to her side. You can't keep going like this. You'll burn yourself out. I have to, she replied, her voice strained but resolute. If I stop now, we lose everything. Kale hesitated, then nodded grimly. Then let me help. Let us help. Together they formed a line with the strongest fighters, creating a barrier between the humans and the rest of the villagers. The battle raged on, brutal and chaotic, until finally, the tide began to turn. One by one, the human ships withdrew, retreating into the sky like wounded beasts. When the last vessel disappeared over the horizon, an eerie quiet settled over the battlefield. Smoke curled lazily into the air, and the scent of burned metal hung heavy in the atmosphere. Exhausted but victorious, the villagers gathered around Lyra, their faces streaked with soot and tears. You did it, Mira said softly, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. You saved us. Lyra shook her head, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. Not yet, she murmured. This isn't over. Not until we make sure they never come back. Behind her, the Heartstone pulsed gently, its light unwavering. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Lyra knew one thing for certain: her people would face them together. For now, that was enough.